Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well. In this video I'm going to talk about 3 of the most haunted places in the world. And yeah, I hope you can pull up a stump with me and we'll get into the video. The Hoyaba Forest is a 250 hectare forest that prides itself in being called the Bermuda Triangle of Romania. The forest is well known for the high strangeness that occurs within its limits. Apparitions, disembodied voices, disappearances, poltergeist-like activity, missing time are all commonplace while visiting this area. And all this is not to leave out what the forest is also famous for: UFO sighting. The area itself appears to be so haunted, so sinister, that most of the residents shun the place entirely. Some experiences of people that do get brave enough to go into the forest are not limited to a high sense of anxiety, disorientation, scratches and bruises appearing on their skin, in some cases being thrown to the ground by an invisible force. Some people have even reported going into the forest for what appears to be minutes, but when they come back out, it has been hours that have passed. One such experience is that of a little girl, aged 5 years old, who wandered into the forest and vanished without a trace for 5 years. After the 5 years, she re-emerged from the forest wearing the same untarnished clothes that she had worn on the day she went in. Another disappearance is where the forest gets its namesake. A farmer named hoyaba wandered into the forest with some 200 sheep and vanished without a trace. It is because of this that the forest is thought to be the gateway to an alternate dimension. Just like that little girl who disappeared and reappeared after 5 years, she had no idea of the things that had happened. She had no idea how much time had passed. And it doesn't stop there. Apparitions seem to appear on camera where there was none to the naked eye. Strange orbs seem to appear in the forest at night. Giving credence to the alternate dimension theory, some people have reported seeing weird animals that seem to appear and disappear at will while walking through the forest. Others still have reported a thick black fog that seems to linger and crawl along the floor of the area, especially when coming on dark. The wind is said to whisper and call your name, and the apparitions and fog and whispers are thought to be that of the tormented souls of the Romanian peasants that were murdered brutally within the forest in the past. With all this energy emanating from the area, it's no surprise that there is a lot of UFO activity that seems to happen in the area. In fact, it seems that a lot of the paranormal activity and UFO activity is focused on a singular area, where there seems to be a vegetation dead zone. It is a near-perfect circle, almost burned into the ground, where nothing will ever grow. Soil samples were taken of the area, and there's no reason why things should not be able to grow here. Many of the locals consider this area to be the home of all these spirits. And for me personally, it kind of reminds me of the fairy circles in Ireland, but on a much bigger scale. Even the gateway to alternate dimension stuff, all the disappearances, everything like that seems to resemble some kind of fae thing from Ireland. I don't know if there's any correlation there or not, but it really seems to feel that way to me, like there's some kind of similarity. And one odd occurrence of high strangeness in the area is that some people, instead of experiencing missing time, they will go in there and they'll remember all of their past experiences. Every little detail of their entire life they remember. But as soon as they exit the forest, they lose the memories. So there really seems to be something about this area that's not only taken into account how the vegetation seems to grow at sharp and weird angles, and how the trees seem to have like a charring on the bottom of them. So you kind of wonder what it is about this area. And I know that some people would say that like, oh, well, it's the energy from all the peasants being murdered. But it seems that the forest was named after the farmer that disappeared there a while before that. So the area obviously had something going on beforehand. Like, I remember reading somewheres about places of high strangeness have like a lot of magnetism in the area. I don't remember a lot about that, so you're just gonna have to take my word for it or look it up. I don't know. But a lot of places of high strangeness seem to have a lot of magnetism, have like weird weather, have like a high amount of poltergeist activity, like in this forest. They say that some people get like cuts and burns and scrapes, and some people even thrown to the ground, like I said, by an invisible force. A lot of the stuff seems to happen in areas like this, where it has like a lot of history. Now, there's also the belief that sometimes just enough people believing in it can give it enough energy to make it happen. But I think in this case, something had to happen beforehand. Like, there has to be a reason for this area, to all the trees to grow like that, for all the people to be disappearing, for the missing time, the memories thing, the poltergeist activity. There's all something there, and especially the vegetation dead zone, which reminds me, like I said, of the fairy circles in Ireland. But I don't know. What do you think was going on at the hoyaba forest? Britain is not just shrouded in fog, it's also shrouded in mystery as well. From time immemorial to the medieval ages and even the modern day, Britain has history through it all. In fact, some buildings still stand in Britain that are older than most countries. Britain was also the seat of an empire, one of which was one of the only ones to last the First World War. With all of this in mind, it's no surprise that Britain is home to some of the most haunted places on the planet. And in this segment, I'll be talking about one such place called the Ancient Ram Inn in Gloucestershire, England. The original building was built in 1145 and is located in Watton-under-Edge, a market town in the Strab district in Gloucestershire. For millennia before the inn was ever built, the area was considered a sacred pagan burial ground, and is also said to lay on 2 ley lines. A ley line, for those who don't know, is supposedly a lines that circle the globe, and they have like a high amount of supernatural energy in them. Now, 2 ley lines intersecting is obviously going to be a lot. One of these ley lines is said to go all the way back directly to Stonehenge. Now, before the place was ever an inn, its original building was the residence of a priest, which was the minister for a church near there as it was being built, called St. Mary's. In this building, which is actually bigger than you think it is, there were your laborers, your priests had a room, and of course, given the time period, there was also a slave quarters. Much later, though, in the 1930s, it was converted into a pub, and it kind of went through a few owners then and there. And then in the 1960s, John Humphreys bought it to save it from demolishment, and the Humphreys have lived there from 1968, or around 50 years, until they gradually moved out, all of them having pretty terrifying experiences. However, John himself remained as the sole occupant, and he was putting all his time into keeping it preserved as the historical building, and that's up until his death in 2017. In 2017, his daughter took over. Her name is Caroline Humphreys, and she's still the owner of it to this day. And there has obviously been like lots of investigations to happen here. Lots of ghost shows have gone to this place because it's pretty freaky now. And I'm going to go over some of the experiences that people have had here. Oh, but before I do that, it's a cool little fact to note that the deed that I don't know if it was John Humphreys who got it or just the deed in general, is so old that it's written in Norman French. So that's definitely not yesterday. Anyways, one experience here is John Humphreys himself said that the first night that he spent moving in, he was pulled out of his bed by the wrists by a demonic force. He claimed to have been attacked by violent entities such as a succubus or an incubus, depending. And that's not all. There's apparently the spirit of a young girl that haunts the inn, specifically the attic. People say that she's the ghost of a former innkeeper's daughter who was murdered in the 16th century. There are also sightings of a ghost rising out from the floor and a female ghost hanging from a beam in the rafters. John himself has also found some pretty disturbing things in his time when restoring the place. When he was looking behind a chimney, he found evidence of like ritual sacrifices, satanic worship, a goat's hoof behind the chimney, centuries-old skeletal remains of children, broken daggers, among other things. And as a result, he placed children's toys around the inn to kind of appease the ghost children. Because for me, I don't know about anybody else, I can do ghosts, but ghost children creep me the F out, like 100%. Ghost children is where I draw the line for me. A lot of guests have said that they've been pushed over, that they've been pushed, they've been pulled out of bed. A lot of them say they get cold randomly. Some have even said that it feels like that the shadows are watching them. And to be honest, I've been in areas, so I know the feeling when like you see like a dark corner, or like you see something by a window and it's just a shadow, but you just know there's something else in the shadow. And even though all these people died there, you might think to yourself, well, like there's obviously been like a lot of people to die in other areas there, why aren't there ghosts there? Or if like there's not the same type of thing, like maybe not a full body apparition, but something gets pushed or like things go missing, and that could be because of the ley lines. I don't know a whole lot about ley lines because I've just learned about them like the past year or so, but it's my understanding that since there's ley lines there, that would like it's like an energizer battery. It would kind of just supercharge the spirit so that it has that much more power. And probably given the fact it was on a sacred burial ground, there's some Amityville horror vibes right there, that obviously things are going to be amped up quite a bit if there's that much energy in the area. It could also explain the people getting a staticky feeling or people getting cold as well, I think anyways. One of the most haunted rooms in the inn would be the bishop's room. And John Humphreys, when he was alive, said that this room was the most haunted because it had several malevolent spirits located on the first floor. And he said that one time a medium was lifted off the ground and thrown across the corridor after trying to push the door open. Some people reported seeing the ghost of a cavalier by the dressing table before he walks across the room and into the other wall. Some others said they saw apparitions of two monks in the room, and there's terrifying tales of the screams of a man. People said that he died by having his head repeatedly thrust into the fireplace. And just to add to how like creepy this room is, apparently the room itself is like a crimson red. I can't find a picture of it, but like I hear it's crimson red, and there's like stab marks and broken china on the bed sheets, supposedly made by devil worshippers that can also be seen there. There's also the witch's room in the inn. Now, the witch is said to be a witch because she didn't practice the state-sanctioned version of Christianity at the time. And we all know back then a lot of people couldn't even read, so you kind of had no choice but to follow the state. And if you spoke out against the state, you would be accused of being a witch and you would be burned at the stake. She's said to still be seen in the room, sitting on the floor and just kind of chilling in the room. And she also has a familiar, which is a black cat, seen next to her in the room. So you can definitely see how a lot of stuff has happened at this inn, and none of it is that good, it seems. And at one time there was a priest or another bishop, I don't remember, I don't have the note in front of me, but he is quoted in saying that it is the worst place that he's ever had the displeasure of visiting because he tried and failed to exorcise the spirits from the Ancient Ram Inn. So obviously it's impossible to kind of record every sighting that's ever happened at this inn, but I have to wonder if a place like this is on a ley line. I wonder if in the previous segment I mentioned the hoyaba forest, kind of wonder if that's on a ley line too. It's something to think about. One random fact about the area I live in, which I will not name, there is a United Anglican and Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is a dentist office now, and the Catholic Church has been moved way down the road. But that's besides the point. They're all on the same side of the road, and someone told me that that was a ley line, and that's why they were all built on that part of the road. I don't know, it's pretty cool, I thought. I still don't know a lot about them, but, take from that what you will. When one thinks of Italy, they think of the history surrounding the area, the romantic connotations that can be there, the walkways, the canals. Of course, given the past couple of years, you think of COVID-19. But besides the point, you don't really think of World's Most Haunted Island is very high on that list. It's an island so haunted that it's generally illegal to go there, and most of the people that own the island don't actually go to the island. So during the days of the Roman Empire, there used to be inhabitants on the island. It was kind of far away from war, far away from a lot of the issues of an empire that was probably at that point starting to crumble. However, there came a time when the war came to the area, so the people on the island were moved off of that island and they went to a different one. However, during the Roman plague, they would put their sick people on boats and send them to that island as like a kind of an ancient quarantine type thing. However, obviously, that doesn't lead to very many good things, and pretty soon the island was overcrowded by thousands of dead bodies. They were largely dumped in mass graves, or burned, and they would just have a simple stake in the ground to show where they were. This continued into the Black Plague later on, where the same thing happened. It got to the point with the hysteria that even if you showed any signs of being sick, you'd be drug off into the night kicking and screaming by your terrified family members, and you'd be shipped off to Poveglia. In fact, many people who went to the island weren't actually sick with the plague at all, but while there, got the plague and died. So for them, it just kind of reinforced, they were sick all along, when in reality, they had given them a death sentence by sending them to the island. And because of this, the soil itself is now rotten. It used to be home to these thriving vineyards and all that stuff, but now it's apparently 50% human ash, because so many people died there, so many people were burned there, that it just poisoned all the soil on the island. And in 1922, a mental hospital was built on the island, and we all know about mental health care for disabled people back in the 20s. So obviously, being that far away off of Italy, you had some very not so good doctors that were on there with these mentally disturbed people. In fact, it can even be said that nowadays that the first thing the government loves to cut is mental health whenever they want to slash budgets and stuff. So it's still a topic that, we've come a long way, but it's still worth being talked about that we still have a long way to go on that front. And I'm not trying to get political or nothing. I'm just stating my personal opinion on mental health things because I have issues of my own. But anyways, you can guess just how exacerbated these issues were, since so many people were burned on the island. You'd have so many angry spirits. They'd be unbelievably angry, and then they would take it out on all the people, including the doctors, the nurses, and of course the mentally disturbed people that were there. So it just exacerbated all these issues. And there's also the reports of human experiments that were done on the island to the people in the hospital as well. Stories from Poveglia also talk about a demented doctor who worked on the island and did some pretty awful experiments to them. He did lobotomies that he thought were a great way to treat and cure any mental illness, so he performed them on the patients, usually against their will, usually with hammers, chisels, and drills, with no concern for sanitation or anesthesia or really any care to what the person was feeling. And there's apparently other experiments he did which are not noted, that he would take special patients, it says, and take them to the bell tower, and whatever he did in there, sometimes their screams can still be heard on the island for people who go there. By the end, this doctor began to suffer his own mental issues and was undergoing his own mental torture. It is said that the screams of the people that he tortured in life were haunting him tirelessly, and eventually he went completely crazy, climbed up to the top of the bell tower, and jumped off. Now, some say that there was a revolt in the mental hospital and he was thrown off there by the patients. Some say he was hanged, like he hanged himself. And of course, the one where he was tortured by the spirits so bad that he went and jumped off himself. One nurse actually says that she witnessed the fall, and initially he survived, but then a ghostly mist overcame his body and choked him to death. Somehow, the hospital stayed open until 1968, and it's my understanding that for a little while it was used as a seniors complex as well. So obviously they just don't really learn, do they? And also that bell tower that I mentioned before is actually still there on the island. So that's another spooky little fact there. It's said that charred bones will still wash up on the shore from like the days when they used to do the mass burnings. So that just goes to show you how many people were burned there. And it's even said that the doctor can still be heard sounding the bell tower at night. Now, after the asylum and the hospital and the seniors complex all closed in the area, it started being sold to private owners, and none of them held it very long before they sold it to somebody else. In one situation, it seems that there was a family who bought it, and they had the intention to build a holiday home on the area. However, they were only there for one night before they left because their daughter apparently almost had her face ripped off entirely by an angry entity in the area, and it was filled with like such other horrors that they left within hours and never went back. And as I mentioned, COVID before, apparently before the plague, the island was used to quarantine people to prevent the spread of just outside diseases getting in. You'd have to quarantine at the island for 40 days. And like it wasn't like a torturous thing like it was for the unfortunate plague victims. It was like more like a hotel type thing where they could eat, smoke, and drink and talk to people. They had contact with the outside world through mail and everything like that. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video of 3 of the most haunted places in the world. You get what I mean. If you liked the video, like, share, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. And I hope you can tune in with me for the next video, whenever that's out. So I hope you have a good night, and thank you for watching.